This is Carrie Smith on the Verb Altitude Hour on WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. The viewpoints expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of WRUU, its license holder, or its staff. The following program contains subject matter and realistic language that some listeners may find objectionable. Listener discretion is advised. Today on the show, we have our other host, Torben Prestel. George Seaborough is out with his little girl today, and we also have visiting regular host, James Muhammad Mason, visiting over the phone from Chicago. Please, guys, introduce yourselves to the Verb Altitude audience.
Hello, my name is Torben. Thank you very much for having me.
James Muhammad Mason.
So happy to be back. It's James Muhammad Mason.
They're so cavalier today on a good Saturday. We got WRUU, Verb Altitude Hour. Today we're going to be talking about gang-related violence. We have, over this past weekend, the 4th of July holiday, there's two different events happening in Chicago and Savannah. First, we'll do a rundown of what happened in Chicago. Could you give us a little rundown of what was going on over the weekend with over 100 casualties in Chicago over this past 4th of July weekend? James?
Right. So we had, it wasn't over 100 casualties. Definitely not. But we had a lot of shooting. It was over 100, and I believe it was around 15 to 20 of those were 15 to 20 of those people were actually killed. So it's odd, even for Chicago, and that's why it hit the news stations nationwide. I'm sorry, because this is absolutely insane. For it to happen just that weekend, it was just absolutely insane. So it was about 15 people that were killed, and in total, a little over 100 people that were actually shot over the weekend. So it's very odd for Chicago. It hit nationwide news, and we just have to keep Chicago in prayer because there's a lot of craziness going on here. But there's ways that we can tackle it, ways that we can reduce crime. We'll never rid crime here in Chicago, but there's definitely ways that we can tackle it to reduce it.
Let's play a few videos here from the local news regarding Scott Waldrop's death. Scott happened to be a personal connection here for myself. He used to be my neighbor at 705 Whitaker. He lived in a loft apartment with his partner, Tart Johnson. And Scott was a well-known member of the local community. He was an organizer for Pride. His partner is Tart Johnson. They lived at 705 Whitaker for a few years during my time in residence there. And they just moved about 3 months ago. And I knew of him more than I knew him personally. But he was a big member of the LGBTQ community, very well connected to the business community here in Savannah. And he and Tart were both very connected as well. And interestingly enough, I had an opportunity as their Uber driver. I have met his family this past week, and I got to speak with them personally. But so we really want to make sure we do this well today to give them a moment to reflect back on what happened. So let's play a few videos and see what happened with Scott this past week.
Closed today so staff, family, and friends can grieve their loss together. Scott Waldrop is being remembered as an extraordinary person by those who knew him. The post on the Gray's Facebook page is how many people found out that Waldrop died in the violence that started in City Market. It says with immeasurable sadness that we say goodbye to our friend and colleague Scott Waldrop, who last evening became a victim of the unfettered violence that plagues the city of Savannah. Going on to say that Scott was more than the general manager of the Gray. He was part of the very soul of who we are and what we do. His contributions were exponential because of the purity and generosity of his spirit. Those of us who knew him are truly lucky and infinitely better people for having had him for far too short a time in our lives. Savannah Downtown Business Association President Karen Gwynn agrees.
Scott was such a ray of light. People that frequent the Gray know him and know his smile. He never met a stranger, and he was the ultimate embodiment of what hospitality is in our city.
I've spoken with several people who knew Scott Waldrop, and many of them say that in his last moments here at the corner of Bay and Barnard, he was actually trying to save people when he himself was hit by the car. Gwynn says the heroism Scott displayed is the truest testament to the kind of person he was.
He took care of everybody, and he was always there.
Okay, so basically what happened in the case of Savannah is that for the last 3 decades, gang violence has not been anything new to Savannah. Pretty much has been in Savannah's east and west side community. But over the last decade, we haven't seen a lot of gang violence infiltrate to downtown in the tourist area. But over the 4th of July holiday, on 4th of July night at 12:18 p.m., there were 3 gentlemen in a white SUV. One, they pulled up over to the city market area. One young man got out and went inside the treehouse and shot 4 bullets, and it injured 4 individuals. Am I correct? 4 individuals. And they're making their getaway, running from the police. 2 end up crashing, and two casualties that we know. The young man who shot the bullets, he was apprehended. But in the midst of this accident and this police chase, there were 2 young children that were pushed out of the way, and that was done by Scott Waldrop, that pretty much has now become a martyr in the Savannah area. And a martyr talking about the gang violence and how that erupted into a police chase. So as we talk about gun-related offenses today, we're also talking about the larger picture of how gang violence has now come to the Savannah tourist area, and what will that mean, and how will that come in the Savannah community, and can there be a positive spin to it? Scott's family, speaking to them directly, they have asked that the Savannah community focus on gang violence as a whole. How is that caused? What is the core root of gang violence, which pretty much is what we're talking about today, gang and gun violence in both Savannah and Chicago, where numbers are increasing every day. And being that both happened over the 4th of July holiday, what does that mean in both of these communities and across the whole, looking at these smaller composite areas? So they asked to eliminate the issue of race and talk about the extreme inequalities that we experience in communities and what causes individuals to get involved in gang violence. So that's the focus of our show today. In response to what has happened since Monday, there have been a large number of people getting involved in this conversation about gang violence, especially those who are organizing around Scott's memory, that he has now become a martyr, that it hits close to home for a lot of individuals. And on Wednesday afternoon, there was a large number of people that organized right after the 4th of July festivities with the death of Scott Waldrop on Tuesday evening. And they organized and went to City Hall. So here's a little clip from their walk down Bull Street on Wednesday afternoon to City Hall.
Today's City Council meeting was standing room only. Dozens of people marched there in an anti-violence demonstration. Those marchers, mostly made up of workers in the service industry, came together to remember one of their own killed in Tuesday night's violence. News 3's Martin Staunton continues our team coverage now, live in Johnson Square. Martin.
Good evening to you and to everyone watching. Those 200 people took their message from the streets into City Hall behind me here on Bull Street. That march started about a block away from where I'm standing, just east of Ellis Square. Participants gathered early so they could march to the same beat, so to speak, and make sure that their anti-violence message is clear. A single social media post led scores of people in the downtown service industry to come together to face city leaders. The rallying point is Sorry Charlie's east of Ellis Square, not a block away from where restaurant general manager Scott Waldrop was killed as a result of Tuesday night's violence. The participants hit the street, went through Johnson Square, and lined up outside City Hall to attend the regularly scheduled City Council meeting. They are on one accord to stop Savannah's violence so no one else has to die like Waldrop.
And the fact that I've yet to see hero mentioned along with his name bothers me, and I want to make sure that they know that here. He pushed 3 children, I understand, out of the way to save their lives.
The marchers waited in the heat to address city leaders. Bob Miley was asked to speak for the group.
Today is not a day to cast stones, throw shade, or grab the pitchforks.
Miley calmly and carefully presented the mayor, city council, and city manager with some ideas about quelling downtown violence, starting with a call for a better buy-in from county government as stakeholders in police action. Also, there was a call for police to establish a beat specifically for bars to build better relationships. Also, no negative impact against liquor licenses of bar owners reporting dangerous situations near their business. There's also a call for the creation of a service industry task force, and Miley urged the mayor and council to consider implementing large-scale street closures similar to St. Patrick's Day, because open roads may have been an open invitation for the 4th of July violence.
We have an instance where an individual felt comfortable enough on the 4th of July amidst a crowd of thousands to drive up and fire into a group of people.
Miley conceded the public's role in making changes in terms of seeing something and saying something, but he reminded policymakers that they have the power to do something to prevent deaths like Waldrop's and to remember how he lived.
This group has the ability to memorialize Scott's life and memory with not only the lives he saved, but the countless names, faces, and voices that through direct action of this council and city manager will never hopefully be put into such a dangerous and dire situation again.
And city leaders are considering those suggestions, but agree that it will take a cooperative effort between residents and city leadership to quell the violence in Savannah. Reporting live in downtown Savannah, I'm Martin Staunton, WSAV News 3.
Today's City Council meeting was standing room only. Dozens of people marched there in an anti-violence demonstration. Those marchers, mostly made up of workers in the service industry, came together to remember one of their own killed in Tuesday night's violence.
So we would like to first make sure we give credit for those clips from WSAV. Thank you very much for providing those clips that we were able to utilize for the Verb Altitude Hour today. So let's get into it, guys. What is the root core here? Is it just about the violence in downtown Chicago? Is it just the violence in downtown Savannah? What is the root cause for gang violence, and why is it such an issue in today's urban cities?
Well, if I may, first of all, I would like to say my deepest condolences to the family of Mr. Waldrop. I've met Mr. Waldrop a couple times. I did not know him. We were not friends. But I met him a few times in eating at the restaurant where he was the general manager, and in him coming to the bar where I worked. He was always a very nice, cordial and individual, a joy to be around. And it's a shame that he's no longer around. It's really sad to me. Being in the service industry for years, it really does hurt to lose someone like that. That being said, I think it's time for our city council to do something about gun violence. It's going way too long, and not only gun violence, but violent crime in general. It's increasing. The worst year in Savannah, where we had the infamous cocaine dealer Ricky Givens, in 1991, we had 60 murders. 60. They say that now our violent crime is down, our murders are down slightly from last year because we have 50 instead of 53. So we had 53 in 2015 and 50 in 2016. That is, even though every life that is seemingly saved is a great life. But we have 53 dead people, 53 dead Savannans, 2015, 50 in 2016. One is too many. In 2016, there were 9 victims under 22 years old. There was one that was 6 years old and one that was 14 years old. And in my opinion, this all stems from a few major things: poverty and a lack of education. And I think if we fix those two things, if we fix poverty and if we fix the education system and actually try to educate these people instead of throwing them in jail, which is what we are doing when we say we're ramping up police. We have a fully staffed police force. We're putting a Band-Aid on the problem. We're taking the gang members off the streets, putting them in jail. Hopefully, they're hoping that they kill each other in jail, or maybe they can keep them in there, which is only a business. And then eventually, maybe they let them out, and they go back to the same thing. I don't know how to fix this problem other than with simple education and providing jobs for these people that aren't minimum wage jobs.
James, in lieu of the actual number of reported deaths in Chicago, can you give some light to who is actually doing these crimes in the city of Chicago, and what does the news gain in, what did reporters gain in the number of reported deaths or the reported shootings? They keep it running total in Chicago.
Well, we have, as it's reported, there's just you have gang members that are killing each other and then killing innocent bystanders. But it's honestly crazy. It just seems like it's just spreading out. So you just have everyday folks, business folks, driving down the street. They are, tired of, being in traffic. They get out, they shoot somebody. So you really can't pinpoint it to one, particular thing. However, the majority of the crime that we are experiencing here in Chicago is definitely, it's gang violence. You have gang members, they have beef with a certain other group or a certain person, and they go out and they start shooting. When it comes down to our media, it's, as people in that field like to say, it's sexy. It's sexy to be able to, apply a number to it and have a running count. And that is locally and as well nationally. People like to have that number. And it's just interesting as I'm, just in the grocery store and I'm looking at magazines, they love to say, 17 ways to start your diet. I'm throwing out stuff out, but 17 ways to, start a diet, or, 17 tips to, lose, belly fat. whatever. People are attracted to numbers, just as, humans. We're attracted to numbers. So they've applied it, sadly, to the loss of lives and the violence that we're experiencing here in Chicago and just in general around the country. And it's a sad day when we're almost pleased. It's really sick, but it appears to me that the media is kind of pleased to see that the numbers are going up, because when the numbers are going up with violence, their numbers are going up on, for viewers, watching, the news and, other shows that they have out there discussing these, issues. But I just wanted to, just add some pieces to this. I totally agree. Poverty is an issue. Firearms is definitely an issue. I was reading the Chicago Tribune yesterday, an op-ed by Jeff Smith wrote in yesterday's issue that bringing more federal agents to Chicago won't end the violence. And he goes on to say, we seem to be treating the symptoms instead of the disease. And I agree wholeheartedly. Where he describes one of the symptoms, or the major symptom, was firearms. Yeah, that's definitely an issue. But we also, we have to look at poverty. We have to look at education. We have to consider housing, programs and services for the underserved. We have to look at that, because at this point, in my opinion, we have in Chicago, city council, our state legislators, they've turned their backs on the poor people, and now it's a have and have not. That's the conversation. Oh, if you have, then you're safe. If you don't, okay, you may not live. And right now, the conversation right now is you may not live to see your 16th birthday, and that's a sad day.
You're speaking in reference to President Trump declaring a national emergency as he quotes a violent crime of epidemic in Chicago's South Side area. And talking about the South Side area, are there different areas of the South Side? What is the South Side to this term that's been coined? What is the South Side? Is it just one big community of gangs that are shooting people up on a daily basis? What are we talking about here when President Trump is talking about sending federal agents into Chicago? Who are these people? Is it just one massive area of violence and generational poverty, people that have a low educational who are these people?
So, and it's interesting that you asked this question. What a lot of people, when you're watching national news, or when you're watching local news, but when folks outside of Chicago read or watch anything about Chicago, they only hear South Side, or they hear the West Side. Now, there's many communities that comprise the South Side of Chicago, and that needs to be understood. It needs to be repeated that it's many communities. It's not just one, group. It's not one group of people that live there. It's, you have a majority of African Americans, but it is still, it's still mixed. You have other, groups. You have other income levels. The major issue is that the reason why the South Side is experiencing, and I would add the West Side, the South and West Side is experiencing, violence, is that 10, 15 years ago, they closed down a lot of, public housing projects. And after they did that, it basically, people were, dispersed in suburban areas, but majority of those people were dispersed within the city. But they were not just, it wasn't really well thought out. And I think this is a problem just nationwide. It wasn't really well thought out. They were placed in areas where it was, different gang turf, if you may. And now that's where the issue is. So now you have people that are, wearing, different colors, or if they are affiliated or not, wearing different colors because that's what they had to do to survive in their old community. They're now going to a new community doing that same thing.
But there's
but
there's well-to-do areas.
There are well-to-do areas.
Well-to-do,
yes.
influential black areas of Chicago. Let's be real here. Black areas of Chicago where other minorities want to move to. So it's not just in Chicago South Side.
I do believe.
So the president, he lives in Kenwood. I grew up not too far from his home, and today, still you'll find people getting shot and killed. Not literally in his backyard, but in his backyard, a few blocks away. It's a very nice community, but things will happen. So, sadly, in the case of Scott Waldrop, you have that case. You have these situations almost every day, every week here in Chicago, where somebody that is not, they're not there for the nonsense. They're just trying to live their lives. And my condolences go out to his family, because this is just, insane that he's walking across the street, just walking across the street. You can't walk across the street anymore, and he, wants to, shield someone from getting hurt, and then he ends up losing his life. Well, and you have those types of stories here, where you have people just living their lives in a nice neighborhood. Somebody's going by from another crime, from a crime, and then they end up shooting someone else in the process. So that's the type of stuff that you'll have here. Kenwood, you have multi-million-dollar homes. You also have some sprinkles of people that may not have that much money, but everybody has, for years, been able to live quietly together. And that's Chicago. We should be able to do that. But because of what has happened when it comes down to public housing, we are now experiencing this.
So, Torvin, going to Savannah's east side and west side, now this issue has come to Savannah's downtown, where it means dollars.
Right.
Where it's an issue because it has now been exposed to the internal problems of Savannah, has now been exposed to the national community. It's been aired on national CNN syndicates, also the AJC, local news stations in Atlanta, even as far out as regions including Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, not Tennessee, but I meant to say Tennessee, Alabama, Florida. It's not just what's reported here in Savannah. When these things happen, they're going all over.
I agree. I think every community has this happening, just about, where you have the community trying to do what's right and control crime, but sadly, our elected officials are not elected because they're great problem solvers. They're not. We don't elect them for that. We elect them to raise money. That we elect people who raise money well. And we don't, and the ability to solve problems is on the back burner, but and so we have a situation where we're putting the problems, which are people, into a jail, and it's boiling over. You have to eventually let some of these people back out onto the street. You can't just keep everyone in there, and it continuously boils over. And they're happy to heavily police a couple of areas in a city, almost every city. In Savannah, it happens to be the west side and the east side, which is basically the west side of downtown and the east side of downtown. And downtown is the safe zone, is what people consider it to be, even though it's not even all that safe. There are regularly violent crimes reported there, robberies, murder, what have you.
Right.
Rape, especially, heinous crimes. So but people who live in these communities, this is their everyday life. This is what they struggle with day after
Every
day,
day.
in and out. They live it, they breathe it, they smell it. We see it when it strikes at our soul, when it's front and center for us, and then it really stings. It's like, oh, we really got to do something about this, and we do. And sadly, we have to lose a life, a valued, treasured life, a shining light in this city, at least, to show us. Like, we can't sit back and say, let's hire more police officers. That does not work. It hasn't worked. It's not gonna work. Wake up. What can you do? Educate people. What you can use the police officers in a more effective way. We don't effectively use police officers. We send them out with a gun, with less training than a hairdresser, literally, and say, go protect the community, and mostly just watch these poor people over here. That's not an effective way to deal with crime. You have to go now. If you're going to send the police out with a gun to homes and say, make sure your kids are in school, or no children running around on the street. All children must go to school, and if your children aren't going to school, then now you're in trouble. Oh, now we may take your children from you. None of that's being done. That's too radical to take people's children away.
Right.
But and even I will say that. But
Well, let's keep the conversation going, talking about these real issues and the real causes. In the second segment, when we bring it back from a national to a local level and really get into the root of this just a little bit further. So this is Carrie Smith on the Verb Altitude Hour on WRUU Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah's Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by a grant from Sentient Bean, offering fair trade coffee, vegan and vegetarian food, and breakfast all day. Located at 13 East Park Avenue, across the street from the tennis courts at Forsyth Park. Our menu and special events listings can be found at sentientbean.com.
If you enjoy our programming on WRUU-LP, please support the station with a donation. As an individual, you can give any amount, become a basic station member, or become a serious fan of the station. To check out membership rates and to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Again, to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU-LP.
Welcome back to the Verb Altitude Hour on WRUU-LP Savannah. We're in our second segment. That is 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. Welcome back to the Verb Altitude Hour. We are now in our second segment, speaking back with Torvin Pristel here in-house at WRUU, and also James Muhammad Mason visiting again from the great city of Chicago. And today we're talking about gang violence and gun-related incidents that happen with gang violence. And the reason that we're talking about that today is the shooting that happened in Savannah causing the death of Scott Waldrop, and also talking about these gun-related and gang-related offenses that have created national awareness of these issues in Chicago. So let's get the conversation going in the second segment, talking about what are some of the real issues going on to cause people to get involved in this type of gang-related activity. So, who is actually running the true root of the violence? Who is involved in Chicago and Savannah as far as gang violence? how old are these individuals, and is there a common nationality, demographic, race, ethnicity, gender when it comes to those mostly involved in gang-related offenses?
Here in Chicago, we are definitely, you definitely are seeing that it's mostly teenagers to the age of like mid-20s, male, African American, mostly, and Hispanic. So that's what we're seeing right now. I'm sorry.
Same thing here in Savannah. Most of them are, the profile is mainly black male between the ages of 13 to 21 years of age, according to local statistics. And I'm getting some of this information from a 2015 paper that I did on local issues as a problem statement, looking at local issues of crime when we're talking about these higher offenses, which are larceny, sexual assault, not sexual and physical assault, also auto theft, and murder. So within this realm of what comes out of really gang-related offenses, the young men who get involved in gangs, it comes out of vast inequalities in their community, where they're displaced from opportunities in other areas, maybe because of public transportation, adequate education, and mainly just with some corporations creating a ready-made group of young people who are good for the taking for low-skilled labor employment, be it manufacturing, warehouse, service, or retail. And I hate to put it in those generalizations, but studies support these statistics. That and in the Savannah area, from looking at it from 2009 to 2015, when there were a larger number of higher crime, what I call higher violent crimes being reported, and a larger number of larger number, let's say, corruption in the local police force, and that would be the Savannah Chatham Police Department. That has now, it's been merged for the last decade between Chatham and Savannah. That when you see a larger number of these crimes being reported, number one, and second of all, a larger number of corruption with individuals being exposed and losing their job or being made forced to leave their positions, we see a larger number of these crimes being reported. That we see it on a bigger scope. And because of that, then we know what's going on. It's going on in those off years and those off days and off hours. But it's more reported when it's becoming sensationalized and the news is profiting from reporting these numbers. It's not that it doesn't go on when it's not. It's still happening, but larger frequencies of these activities become more sensationalized, and it causes more participation because then they're building their teams. It's like they're building their gangs up through the what would you say, it makes it pretty. It makes it what's the word here? It makes it like you want to be involved for young people.
I do believe that young people do want to be in gangs a lot of times in depressed communities. It's a simple fact. They need protection. They grew up with...
It makes it exciting.
It makes it exciting, adventurous. Young men want to do something. Mm-hmm. But we do have to... So I must first say that we have a ton of good police officers, men and women, who do a great job every day. They go out facing long odds. We give them a bunch of bad choices to make every day, and very few good ones. And I don't want to lay this squarely on the feet of the police. However, incarcerating people is a business. For each person that's incarcerated, it costs $31,307 per year. That is way more than any university. Not any university. A lot of universities. UGA, for example. $63.4 billion per year spent on incarcerating people in America only. It's a business, and with any business, especially one dealing in humans, there's going to be corruption from the correctional officers to the officers on the street to the people in charge, as Carrie, you just alluded to.
And a lot of this was exposed from a 73-page racketeering lawsuit, which was covered by Tim Curl in the 2015 throughout, I guess, over a year in the Savannah Morning News, where it was 14 former and current City of Savannah employees violating the Georgia's Racketeering, Influencing, Corrupt Organizing Act, where pretty much it was thrown out of court. The court ended up saying, there's no clear evidence providing, that police officers were in violation, or local city council or local officials were involved in it. But we did see since 2015 that almost half of our city council was replaced by the local citizens saying, we are not going to put up with this anymore.
Fed up
because we have a greater community-wide awareness on these ongoing issues of frequent violent and higher-end robberies in the local, even involving local universities like Savannah State and Armstrong. Back in 2016 and 2015, there were reported shootings at both universities. And this is just a small focus in Savannah in comparison of what goes on in Chicago every day.
Very small. It's a small scale, but per capita it's large. We're not in the top 10, but it's a problem. We do have to I think put most of the blame on the politicians, and we have to vote them out when they don't give us good results.
And I think what you're alluding to is the fact that there's government policies that create vast inequalities.
If people don't feel that they're treated fairly, if in depressed neighborhoods only, people don't feel like they're treated fairly by the police officer.
Getting what they need, as far as getting connected through public transportation to other opportunities.
I agree. You're going to have crime. If there's these are not just numbers. These are people. If there's a gentleman who has no job, he can't get a job because he has some kind of felony conviction. He has to put on every resume. People don't want to hire him. He has two kids to feed. He does want to provide for them. He can't provide for them even when he does get a job. It's a minimum wage job. And if you can provide for your family on $7 an hour, you are a fantastic superhero. The problem, though, I do believe also does lie with the police. Now we use them in the wrong way, but we have to look at where the problem lies, and people not wanting to come forward and say, "Hey, this person is the one doing this." It's because of what the no snitching law in the minority or depressed neighborhoods. So if you tell the police, you're eventually more than likely going to be arrested with the person that you told.
Let's talk about gentrification. And then let's talk about community policing and what that means in preventing these type of activities. And the reason I bring this up is because Savannah has suffered through the last 2 decades of gentrification and community sprawl, and also spatial displacement, meaning, we'll have larger number of those who live in third class and in poverty in areas that are just right outside of the downtown district, but there's opportunities in those other nuclei. There's those other business zones. Let's say in Savannah, it would be Garden City, Pooler, the South Side. But it takes a long time to get there because they're spatially mismatched from the areas that they could find greater opportunity in. Mm-hmm. And then they may resort to gang violence or get caught up in illegal drug trafficking or human trafficking even, because it provides a larger substantial income. So that's one side of it. Then the other side of it is also the concept that we've gotten away from since 9/11, since outfitting a lot of the local communities through Homeland Security with command units, with personal protection equipment, which they may need if there was a terrorist attack in those areas. But how has that shifted the concept of community policing to, now then taking the law in the streets, and how that can also create, and how it's identified in the news media to counterbalance what we're trying to do, and that becomes sensationalized. So the reactions that young, impressionable black men take after, seeing folks like Tupac and other folks coming out of the woodwork looking at the 90s and how it's been sensationalized as being beautiful and artistic and dramatic, to what are the real ramifications of these activities. So let's talk on that for just a moment.
So the thing is that here in Chicago, there's a conflict going on with the have and have not, and in that conflict, I was just as I was researching to prepare for the show, I saw it's just something very clear when you're looking at public housing, for instance. We started back in 1994. That's when we received the Hope Grant to redevelop Cabrini Green, and the whole goal for that was to make it a mixed income neighborhood. And moving on to, I won't go through every piece, but moving on to 2010. There was one building that was still standing, and then after that they demolished that. And as around the city, we noticed that people were now dispersed, to other areas. Now our education system is being affected. You have the school board in 2013, which our school board, which is unlike any other, is appointed by the mayor, but they voted in favor of shutting down 50 schools, which were largely in African American and Latino communities. So when you add all of these things up, of course you're going to have crime. It just is what it is. You now have ruffled the feathers. You've torn families apart, and you're wanting them to be normal, and you want them to be successful, or at least you're saying that you want them to be successful. However, my position on that. You don't want these, people to be successful. And saying these people, speaking of poor African American and Latino people, you don't want them to be successful. You don't want them here. And here, you don't want them in the city. You don't want them to thrive. And they're using public funds to do that. And that's this very sad piece about it. I would, disagree and say that it's not really the elected officials, problem. It's really the voters. We have the problem. We're not going to we're not speaking up. We're not going to our elected officials and saying this is what we want. We're not voting them out, which I applaud you all. I believe you said 53%. You all voted out 53% of your.
I would say
your city council.
Was it 4? Yeah, about 53%.
Right around there.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. That's huge.
Here,
we don't have that. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This is a great conversation that we're having today. I have this report that I did back in 2015 was a 45-page report where I started looking at what is causing these violent crimes and these higher-end crimes in Savannah. And then I worked back from my problem statement. And at the end of it, a lot of it come from the lack of empathy training that we have in local police. And then and other issues that we're exposing today is the way that the media covers. And then third, the way that this type of lifestyle is being dramatized and by the news media. But let's really look at something here. Back in both Clinton administrations, there was something that came out with I know you're laughing, but the empowerment zones, which meant looking at Chicago, Boston, and actually Savannah was in this category of empowerment zones, but it's sort of like we didn't do anything with it after 2005. 1995 to 2005. It's sort of like it's been pushed to the wayside, and we're no longer focusing on community building or engaging local communities. In the 1993 book, The Streets of Hope, there's a community in Boston that looked at a 3-decade plan to look at human, institutional, and physical establishment of building the community for change from a community-wide grassroots approach. And it was, they had different tiers, but they asked 2 simple questions. What can the community do for you? And what can you give back to the community? And this was a book that was released also looking at this concept in 1994. But let's get to the root cause of it, because we only have a few minutes here. Not the root cause, but what does this mean? How can we drive a sense of community? And I think this is what Scott Waldrop's family is thinking about. How do we looking past fights and battles about police officers versus the black community, and negating those conversations among white folks that say it's because the black folks are not taking responsibility for what they do in their communities, and it's all their fault.
I think this is unfortunately the genius of the business plan. Mm-hmm. They want us to do nothing about it but squabble amongst ourselves and not really come up with a solution. They give us a couple of things to push and pull about. It's the black people, it's the white people, it's all the Democrats are going to take your guns, all the Republicans are going to keep their guns and have missile launchers, and we have to stop fighting these stupid battles and come up with some common sense gun legislation. Now, that I know is far fetched dealing with our current Congress, but we have to have some kind of common sense gun legislation. The states with the highest per capita murder rates are are not what you would think. They're the rural states, Alaska and Arkansas and Mississippi. It's the states with the lower gun regulations. And then when it comes to the cities, it's the cities with the higher minority populations with the highest murder rates from guns. So it's people on both sides. We have to stop arguing and come up with a solution, a common sense solution. Well, my name is Torvin Pristel. I'm here with James and Carrie Smith, the Verb Altitude Hour. This is WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by a grant from Sentient Bean, offering fair trade coffee, vegan and vegetarian food, and breakfast all day. Located at 13 East Park Avenue, across the street from the tennis courts at Forsyth Park. Our menu and special events listings can be found at sentientbean.com.
We're going to spend just a few minutes, because we only have a few minutes left, but in the 1994 book, focusing on the Dudley Street neighborhood in Boston's Roxbury district, I think we have a lot to gain in both Chicago and in Savannah looking back at this. Savannah could utilize a similar initiative and program to transform the community, to work together in order to build community and also engage with the police if they looked at more empathetic approach to community policing. But also that would mean that we would have to transform the SCMPD, how they train and how they respond in the street, and how we work and utilize new technologies and strategies for micro-targeting, but also looking at this community engagement component both in problem solving and community policing, new strategies working with neighborhood associations, and really look at how we educate the community and work with the community to come to a community whole approach, that we just don't point the finger and we see not just marches, but how do we do this and interact on a more daily basis.
We must, first of all, not put out the fire of the march, but realize that the march is not going to get us anywhere necessarily. But it's a way for us to come together, network, and come up with some common sense solutions on how to really fix things in Savannah. Take it to the people who can affect change, and if they do not do it, we need to really come together and vote them out. Get people into office who are actually going to do something effectively and take care of this terrible problem of violence that we have in Savannah
it's
and
almost
Chicago.
Like Scott has awakened this spirit in Savannah with this synergy to focus on a concept of community policing that goes beyond race, that goes beyond gender, that goes beyond all the vast inequalities that are there that would cause individuals to get involved in gang violence, to say, here's what it is and what are the roots of it and how can we get involved. And I think that has touched the hearts of those in the service industry and
right.
those in the LGBTQ community that are, normally not involved in these type of community grassroots activities.
And understandably so, I feel. A lot of service industry people aren't from here. They're from all over the country, all over the world. They don't really have any vested interest. I think this is really if anything can be gained from this terrible situation, is that maybe we can get more people mobilized to do something about violence.
At some point, we have to get to a point where we're not responding. We're not responding to terrible situations, and we're being just proactive. And once we decide to be proactive, all over this country, here in Chicago, there in Savannah, have to sit down, be proactive, and see the writing on the wall and figure out what is the problem, who are the people that's actually causing these problems, and what's the solution. Don't rely on, I'm extremely active here in Chicago, and I don't rely on politicians. I just don't. I know that the power lies within myself, within the community, and I lean on my neighbors to make sure that we create change, that we often have conversations on how we go about making change within our community. But that's when we have those conversations and truly be honest, have honest, conversations, then we'll be able to create some sort of change. But we can't be responsive. No more.
Well,
proactivity.
I agree.
This has been a great conversation today, Torvin and James. Thank you so much for joining us on the Verb Altitude Hour on WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, Savannah.